The alarm inside the observatory did not stop ringing. Laura Bennett stood frozen at her console, staring at a signal that should not exist. It came from deep space, moving faster than anything she had ever tracked before, and it was heading straight for Earth. She had worked at the Deep Space Listening Station for 6 years. She had chased comets, mapped asteroids, and logged thousands of quiet, uneventful nights. Tonight was different. The signal pulsed in a pattern too precise to be natural, and it grew stronger with every passing second. "Get Nathan on the line," she said to her assistant, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "Tell him we have contact." Nathan Cole arrived within the hour, still buttoning his uniform jacket. He was the station's liaison to the International Defense Council, a man used to false alarms and drills. But when he saw the data on Laura's screen, his face lost all color. "This isn't a satellite malfunction," he said. "This is a ship." Within 3 hours, the ship entered Earth's orbit. It did not fire. It did not attack. It simply hung in the sky, silent and enormous, casting a shadow that stretched across 3 continents as the planet turned beneath it. Governments scrambled. Militaries were placed on high alert. News channels around the world broke into their programming with the same trembling question: are we being invaded? Then, without warning, every screen on the planet flickered at once. A voice spoke, calm and careful, in every language spoken on Earth. "We are not here to harm you," the voice said. "We are here to warn you. Please, listen carefully, because your survival depends on it." The voice belonged to a being named Voss Ellerin, a representative of an organization the being called the Galactic Council. Voss appeared on every screen as a shifting, calm shape, difficult to describe, easy to trust. The Council, Voss explained, had watched Earth for a very long time. They had chosen not to interfere, believing humanity needed to grow on its own path, free from outside influence. "But something has changed," Voss said. "A conflict has begun beyond your solar system, between 2 powers, older and stronger than anything you can imagine. This conflict is spreading. It is coming closer to your home with every passing day. We beg you, for your own sake, to remain hidden. Do not send signals outward. Do not draw attention to yourselves. Stay quiet, and you may yet be spared." The message ended as suddenly as it began. For a moment, the entire world sat in stunned silence. Laura watched the broadcast from the observatory, her hands trembling on the edge of her desk. She had spent her whole life searching for proof that humanity was not alone in the universe. Now that proof had arrived, and it came with a warning that chilled her to the bone. "They want us to hide," she whispered. Nathan stood beside her, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Governments won't just take orders from a floating light in the sky," he said. "There will be meetings. There will be arguments. There will be people who want answers before they agree to anything." He was right. Within a day, an emergency summit was called, at a neutral location, bringing together leaders from every major nation. Laura was invited to attend as a scientific advisor, given her role in first detecting the signal. She sat in a private car with Nathan as it wound through quiet streets guarded by soldiers, her mind racing with questions she doubted anyone could answer. The summit hall was tense. Diplomats whispered in tight circles. Military officers stood near the walls, arms folded, watching the large doors where the alien delegation was expected to arrive. When Voss entered, walking beside 2 other beings that shimmered faintly like heat above a road, silence fell across the room. "We understand your fear," Voss said, addressing the gathered leaders. "We understand your questions, but time is short, and the danger is real. The conflict I mentioned involves 2 ancient powers, the Varel Concord and the Ashen Dominion. Their war has raged for longer than your recorded history. It has now reached the outer edge of this region of space." A leader from the Eastern Hemisphere rose to speak. "Why should we trust a warning from strangers we have never seen before today?" "Because if you do not listen," Voss replied gently, "you may not survive long enough to regret it." The council delegation offered a solution. They would provide Earth with a cloaking relay, a device capable of masking the planet's technological signals from outside detection. If Earth used it consistently, they claimed, the 2 warring powers might pass by, without ever noticing a living world lay hidden beneath the static. All we ask, Voss said, is that you remain silent. Do not send messages beyond your solar system. Do not test new technology that could be detected. Hide, and you will live. The leaders debated late into the night. Some wanted to accept the device immediately, desperate for any promise of safety. Others were suspicious, wondering why beings powerful enough to travel between stars would fear two rival factions so deeply that they begged a much weaker species to vanish, rather than offering real protection. Laura found herself drawn to that same question. If the Council was so advanced, why did they need humanity to hide it all? Why not simply defend Earth themselves? She raised her hand during a quiet moment in the discussion. If your people are able to travel across galaxies, she said, why can't you simply stop this war, or protect us directly? Voss's shifting form seemed to dim slightly, as though the question carried weight. Because some wars, Voss said, cannot be stopped from the outside, only endured or avoided. It was not the answer Laura had hoped for, but it was an honest one, and it left the room heavier than before. By the end of the summit, world leaders agreed to accept the cloaking relay. It was installed atop a mountain research base, hidden from public view, guarded around the clock. Laura was assigned to help monitor its function, working alongside a small team of engineers and scientists, hand-picked for their discretion. The relay was a strange piece of technology, smooth and dark, humming faintly with an energy no human instrument could fully explain. When activated, it blanketed Earth's outgoing signals in a kind of static fog, making the planet appear, to outside sensors, as nothing more than a dead rock, drifting quietly through space. For a while, it seemed to work. Weeks passed without incident. The alien ship departed as quietly as it had arrived, leaving behind only the relay and a promise that the Council would return if anything changed. Laura should have felt relief. Instead, she felt uneasy. Late one night, reviewing data from the relay's control room, she noticed something strange buried deep within its command history. A single activation log, dated long before humanity had ever built the observatory that first detected the alien ship. The relay had been used before. Her hands grew cold as she scrolled through the record. The log showed a brief window, decades earlier, where the device had been triggered from Earth, sending a short burst of signal outward, before falling silent again. It was faint, easy to miss, buried beneath layers of technical noise. But it was there. Someone, or something, had used this relay long before the Council ever revealed themselves. She called Nathan immediately, her voice tight with urgency. "You need to see this," she said. "Something followed that old signal. I think it's already here." Nathan arrived within minutes, and together they stared at the data in silence, the quiet hum of the relay filling the room like a held breath. Whatever had triggered that earlier signal, and whatever might have followed it, was a secret that had been buried for a very long time. And now, it was Laura and Nathan who had found it first. Outside, the mountain wind pressed against the walls of the research base, steady and cold, as if the world itself was waiting to see what they would do next. Laura looked at the log one more time, memorizing the timestamp, the strange characters embedded in the signal, and the quiet, nagging certainty that the Council's warning was only part of a much larger story. She did not know it yet, but the war the Council feared had not simply been approaching Earth. In some small, forgotten way, Earth had already reached out and touched it first. Nathan paced slowly across the small control room, his boots echoing against the metal floor. "We can't tell the summit about this," he said finally. "Not yet. Not until we understand what it means." "You want to hide this from the very leaders who are deciding our future?" Laura asked, surprised at how easily the words left his mouth. "I want to protect them from making a decision based on incomplete information," Nathan said. "If this signal was sent decades ago, before any of us even knew the Council existed, then whoever sent it might already be gone, retired, dead. It could be nothing more than an old ghost buried in outdated equipment." Laura wasn't so sure. She spent the following days quietly cross-referencing old research archives, searching for any record of a project that might explain the signal. Most files from that era had been poorly kept, scattered across outdated storage systems that had never been digitized properly. It took patience, and a fair amount of luck, before she found a name buried within a dusty university record. A small, independent research group that had once experimented with long-range transmission technology, decades before satellites and modern communication had become common. The lead researcher's name had been redacted from most official records, but a single surviving memo referenced a project called Listening Horizon, an ambitious, underfunded attempt to send a message into deep space, hoping that somewhere among the stars, someone might be listening. "They wanted the same thing I've always wanted," Laura murmured to herself, staring at the faded document. "Proof that we aren't alone." She brought her findings to Nathan, who studied the pages carefully before setting them down with a heavy sigh. "If this is real," he said, "then somewhere out there, a message meant as nothing more than a hopeful whisper may have reached the exact ears the Council warned us to avoid." "We need to tell them," Laura said. "Voss deserves to know the truth, even if it complicates things." Nathan hesitated, clearly torn between caution and honesty. "Give me time to think about how we present this," he said. "The wrong reaction from the Council, or from our own leaders, could cause more harm than the secret itself." Laura reluctantly agreed, though the weight of the discovery followed her through the following nights, settling into her thoughts each time she closed her eyes. She thought about the unnamed scientists behind Listening Horizon, people who had likely died without ever knowing whether their message reached anyone at all. Now, decades later, their quiet hope had become the spark behind humanity's greatest crisis. As the days passed, the mountain research base grew quieter, the initial panic of first contact settling into a tense, watchful calm. Laura spent long hours monitoring the cloaking relay, watching for any further irregularities, while Nathan worked closely with select government officials, carefully deciding how much of the truth the wider world truly needed to know. One evening, as the sun dipped below the distant mountain ridge, Laura stood outside the research base, staring up at the darkening sky. Somewhere among those countless points of light, an ancient war continued, unaware of the small, curious signal that had once reached toward it, decades ago, sent by ordinary people who only wanted to know they were not alone in the universe. She hoped, quietly, that their curiosity would not become humanity's undoing. 3 months after the relay was installed, a distress call reached a listening post in a frozen, remote part of the world. It was faint, broken, and strange, arriving on a frequency no modern satellite should have been able to reach. What made it more troubling was the voice buried within the static. It was human. Laura was pulled from her research station in the middle of the night and flown to the site without explanation. When she arrived, she found Nathan already there, standing beside a wall of monitors, his face pale under the harsh lighting of the command tent. "We traced the signal," he said, without greeting her. "It's coming from a satellite that was supposed to be decommissioned 10 years ago. Officially, it doesn't exist anymore." "Then how is it transmitting?" Laura asked. "That's what we need you to find out." The satellite in question had been part of an old defense program, quietly shut down after budget cuts and shifting priorities. Its files were sealed, its funding erased from public record. Yet somehow, it was still active, and someone had used it to send a signal far beyond anything it was ever designed to reach. A joint team was assembled within days, pulling experts from several countries who had sworn to secrecy the moment they arrived. Laura worked alongside a communications specialist named Grace Halloway, a sharp, quick-thinking woman who had spent years studying old satellite systems before the world even knew aliens existed. "This wasn't an accident," Grace said, tracing lines of code across her screen. "Someone accessed this satellite intentionally. They used its old relay systems to boost a signal far past its original range." "Boost it toward where?" Laura asked. Grace hesitated before answering. "Based on the trajectory, it was aimed directly into a region the Council warned us to avoid. The exact territory controlled by the Ashen Dominion." The room fell silent. Nathan stepped forward, arms folded, his expression hard. "So someone sent a message straight into enemy territory, using equipment we didn't even know still worked." "It gets worse," Grace said quietly. Whatever this message contained, it was powerful enough to punch through the static field created by the Council's relay, which means whoever sent it wanted to be heard. Laura felt a chill settle over her. She thought back to the strange activation log she had found weeks earlier, buried in the relay's history. If that earlier signal had been the first quiet whisper into the dark, this new transmission felt like something far louder, far more dangerous. Within 2 days, Voss returned. The council delegation arrived without the calm reassurance of their first visit. This time, their message carried a weight of urgency that made even seasoned diplomats uneasy. "The signal you allowed to escape has been detected," Voss said, addressing a smaller, more tense gathering of leaders and scientists. "The Ashen Dominion believes it to be an act of espionage. They see it as proof that Earth is not the quiet, harmless world we described to them. We didn't authorize any signal," one government official argued. "This was an old satellite, something buried in our own history, that we didn't even know still worked." "That distinction will mean nothing to them," Voss replied. "To the Dominion, intent does not matter, only outcome, and the outcome is this: Earth is no longer hidden. Earth is no longer safe." Laura stepped forward, despite the nervous glances from those around her. "Voss, you told us hiding would protect us. Now you're saying we're already exposed. What happens next?" Voss's shifting form dimmed slightly, the same subtle reaction Laura had noticed before, the alien equivalent of quiet dread. "The Dominion does not act quickly," Voss said. "But when they do act, it will not be gentle. Scouts will likely be sent first, small vessels meant to observe and confirm what they suspect. If they find evidence of advanced defenses or further signals, they may see it as confirmation of a growing threat." "And if we do nothing?" Nathan asked. "If we simply wait?" "Waiting did not protect you before," Voss said. "It is unlikely to protect you now." The meeting ended with more questions than answers. Leaders argued long into the night, some insisting on full transparency and cooperation with the Council's demands, others quietly questioning whether hiding had ever been the right choice at all. Laura returned to her quarters exhausted, her mind spinning with fragments of data, timelines, and half-formed theories. She barely slept before Grace knocked on her door, holding a tablet with trembling hands. "I found something," Grace said. "The old satellite, the one that sent the signal. It wasn't acting alone. There's a secondary system buried in its code, something that activated moments before the transmission went out." "What kind of system?" "A targeting array," Grace said. "Old, primitive by today's standards, but functional. Whoever sent that signal wasn't just reaching out. They were mapping something. Coordinates, distances, possible flight paths." Laura's stomach tightened. "You're saying someone used a decommissioned satellite to send a message and gather tactical data, aimed directly at a species capable of ending a war that has lasted longer than human history?" "That's exactly what I'm saying." They brought the discovery to Nathan immediately, who insisted on keeping the information contained to their small team for now, fearing how quickly panic could spread if world leaders learned an unknown party may have deliberately provoked an interstellar power. Laura agreed reluctantly, though the secrecy sat uneasily with her. Days later, their fears deepened. A remote radar station, near the edge of a northern coastline, picked up a brief, unexplained blip at the very edge of the solar system. Gone, before analysts could fully confirm its origin. It was small, fast, and utterly unlike anything human technology could produce. "It's a scout," Nathan said grimly, reviewing the data with Laura and Grace in a dimly lit control room. "Just like Voss warned us." The scout did not linger. Within hours, it vanished from every sensor humanity possessed, leaving behind only a faint energy signature and a growing sense of dread among those who understood what it meant. The Ashen Dominion was no longer a distant threat discussed in quiet meetings. It was real, and it was watching. Laura barely had time to process the implications before Nathan received an urgent call, his expression tightening as he listened. He hung up and turned to face her and Grace, his voice low. "There's been an incident at a remote outpost near the Southern Research Base," he said. "Communications went dark 20 minutes ago. No explanation, no warning. They traveled through the night to reach the outpost, a small facility staffed by a handful of researchers monitoring atmospheric conditions near a restricted testing zone. When they arrived, the base stood eerily quiet, its lights flickering weakly against the dark sky. Inside, they found the staff shaken, but unharmed. huddled together in the main control room. One young researcher, a nervous man named Ethan Marlowe, explained what happened in halting, frightened sentences. "There was a light," he said, "in the sky, just for a moment. Then all our equipment shut down. No warning, no sound. It just stopped working, and when it came back on, everything felt different, like something had passed right over us." Laura ran a quick diagnostic on the base's systems, her fingers trembling slightly as she worked. The equipment functioned normally now, showing no damage, no corruption, no trace of intrusion left behind, aside from a brief and unexplained gap in the recorded data, exactly the length of the blackout Ethan described. "They were testing us," Nathan said quietly, staring out the window into the dark, star-filled sky. "Seeing how we respond, seeing what we have." Laura felt a cold certainty settle over her, the same feeling she had experienced weeks earlier when she first found the old activation log buried in the Council's relay. Someone, long ago, had reached out into the dark and touched something ancient and dangerous. Now, that ancient danger was reaching back, testing the edges of a world it barely understood, drawing closer with each passing day. As they left the outpost the next morning, Laura looked up at the pale morning sky, wondering how much longer the illusion of safety could possibly last. The Council had warned them to remain hidden. But hiding, she realized with growing certainty, was no longer an option humanity truly had. The war Voss had described as distant and avoidable had already begun brushing against the edges of their world, quiet and unseen, waiting only for the right moment to reveal itself completely. Back at the mountain facility, Laura finally shared with Voss what she and Nathan had uncovered about the old research project called Listening Horizon. She had expected anger, or perhaps disappointment, but the alien delegate's reaction was quieter than she anticipated. "We suspected something similar," Voss admitted, its shifting form calm, despite the weight of the revelation. "Signals of hope are common among young civilizations. Most fade into the void, unanswered. Yours, unfortunately, did not." "Is there any way to know for certain that this old signal is what drew the Dominion's attention?" Laura asked. "Not with complete certainty," Voss said, "but the timing and the direction of the original transmission align closely with the current situation. It is a strong possibility, one we cannot ignore." Grace, who had joined the conversation partway through, frowned thoughtfully. "If that's true, then the recent satellite transmission wasn't the real problem. It was just the moment everything finally caught up with us." "An accurate assessment," Voss said. The knowledge settled uneasily over the small group, a reminder that the crisis they now faced had roots reaching back further than any of them had first realized. Laura found herself thinking often of the unnamed researchers behind that original signal, wondering if they ever imagined their quiet experiment might one day place the entire planet in danger. Meanwhile, the investigation into the decommissioned satellite continued, revealing further troubling details. Grace discovered that the satellite's old targeting array had not simply gathered coordinates at random. It had been quietly recalibrated sometime within the past year, long after the project had officially been shut down. "Someone accessed this system recently," Grace said, sharing her findings with Nathan and Laura in a private briefing. "Whoever it was, they knew exactly what this satellite was capable of, and they used it deliberately." "Do we have any leads on who might have done this?" Nathan asked. "A few," Grace said carefully. "The access codes used match an old military contractor, one that lost its funding years ago after a series of controversial experiments. Officially, that group no longer exists. Unofficially, it seems someone connected to it still had access to old systems no one else remembered. The revelation sparked a quiet, careful investigation, conducted away from public attention, focused on tracking down whoever had reactivated the old satellite and aimed its outdated systems into hostile territory. Laura found herself drawn deeper into the search, driven by a growing need to understand not just what had happened, but why. Days later, the investigation led to a small, private research compound hidden in a remote desert region, officially abandoned years earlier. When a quiet, authorized team arrived to investigate, they found the facility empty, though recently used, its equipment still faintly warm, its systems recently shut down in apparent haste. "Someone knew we were coming," Nathan said grimly, studying the empty compound alongside Laura. They found no answers that day, only more questions. Whoever had reactivated the old satellite had vanished, leaving behind nothing but a cold, empty building and a deepening mystery that would linger over the following weeks. Laura couldn't shake the feeling that whoever was responsible understood the risks far better than anyone in the current coalition, and had acted anyway, for reasons still hidden from view. As the search for answers continued quietly in the background, the more immediate danger remained impossible to ignore. Reports of unexplained scout activity increased steadily across various remote regions of the world, small, quiet reminders that whatever forces were now aware of Earth's existence had not lost interest and were unlikely to lose interest anytime soon. Laura returned to the mountain facility exhausted, carrying with her a growing sense that the crisis unfolding around her was far more complicated than a simple accidental discovery. Someone, somewhere, had made a deliberate choice to reach into the dark, fully aware of what might be listening. Understanding why would prove just as important as understanding what came next. 3 weeks after the outpost incident, the world had changed in ways most people could not yet see. Governments moved in secret, forming new alliances that bypassed old rivalries. Behind closed doors, decisions were being made that would shape the future of the entire planet, decisions the public would not learn about for a long time, if ever. Laura sat in a small, windowless briefing room deep beneath a mountain research facility, surrounded by officials from a dozen different nations. Nathan stood at the front of the room, addressing the gathered group with a calm authority that had grown steadily since the night they first found the old signal log. "We can no longer rely solely on hiding," he said. "The Council's advice made sense when we believed we were undetected. That is no longer true. We need options beyond silence." A representative from a powerful Western nation folded her arms. "Are you suggesting we ignore the Council's warnings entirely? They've made it clear that our technology is nothing compared to what's out there." "I'm suggesting we prepare," Nathan said, quietly, carefully, without provoking anyone further. "If the day comes when hiding no longer protects us, we need to have something more than fear to offer." The room fell into tense debate, voices rising and falling, as officials argued over risk, ethics, and survival. Laura remained quiet for most of the discussion, her mind still occupied by the fragments of alien technology recovered from the old satellite weeks earlier. Small pieces, damaged and incomplete, yet more advanced than anything humanity had built on its own. After the meeting ended, Grace approached her in the hallway, holding a small data drive tightly in one hand. "I think I found something important," she said. "Come with me." They walked together to a private lab hidden deep within the facility, a room accessible only to a small handful of cleared personnel. Inside, a team of engineers worked quietly around a containment table, where fragments of the alien satellite equipment lay spread out under careful lighting. "These pieces," Grace said, gesturing toward a small cluster of dark metal fragments, "aren't just communication parts. They're part of a defensive system, something designed to protect a ship or a structure from direct attack." Laura leaned closer, studying the intricate patterns etched into the metal. "Can we replicate it?" "Not exactly," Grace admitted. "But we can learn from it, adapt it. If we're careful, we might be able to build something similar, using materials and technology we already understand." Over the following weeks, a secret coalition formed, made up of scientists, engineers, and military officials from nations that had once viewed each other as rivals. Old borders and old conflicts faded into the background as humanity faced something far larger than themselves. Laura found herself working alongside brilliant minds from every corner of the world, all united by a single, quiet purpose: to prepare, without giving the Council or the Dominion any reason to believe humanity intended harm. Progress was slow, but steady. Using fragments of alien technology combined with human ingenuity, the team developed early prototypes of shielding systems, capable of absorbing and dispersing energy far beyond what traditional materials could withstand. They were crude compared to what the Council likely possessed, but they were something. A start. Then, without warning, the Council returned again, this time with an urgency that bordered on desperation. Voss arrived alone, without the usual delegation, appearing before a small, private gathering of world leaders and key scientific advisors. including Laura and Nathan. "We have learned of your recent activities," Voss said, the calm tone from earlier visits, replaced by something closer to alarm. "You have been developing defensive technology, using fragments recovered from Dominion equipment." Laura felt her stomach tighten. She had known this moment might come, but she had not expected it so soon. "We're not preparing for war," Nathan said carefully. "We're preparing to protect ourselves, in case hiding is no longer enough." "You misunderstand the danger," Voss said, its shifting form flickering with visible distress. "Any technology you develop, however small, could be detected. If the Dominion senses even the faintest trace of advanced defenses, they will see it as confirmation of hostile intent. They will not wait to understand your reasons. They will act." "And if we do nothing?" Laura asked, echoing the same question she had asked weeks earlier. "If we sit quietly and hope they never notice us at all." Voss hesitated, its form dimming further. "The Council has attempted, for a very long time, to protect species like yours from conflicts far beyond your understanding. But we cannot promise safety through silence alone. Not anymore. Not since your signal reached them." "Then help us," Laura said, stepping forward despite the nervous glances from officials around her. "If hiding isn't enough, and doing nothing isn't enough, then give us something real. Teach us, guide us. Don't just warn us and disappear." Voss remained silent for a long moment, its shifting form flickering between shapes, as though wrestling with an impossible decision. "The Council does not have the authority to directly aid a species in conflict," Voss said finally. "Doing so would violate ancient agreements meant to preserve balance among older civilizations. If we intervene, we risk drawing further attention and further danger, not just to Earth, but across this entire region of space." "Then we're on our own," Nathan said quietly. "You have always been on your own," Voss replied, not unkindly. "We simply hoped you would remain unseen long enough to never need to face that truth." After Voss departed, the room fell into heavy silence. Laura stared at the empty space where the alien delegate had stood, her mind racing with the weight of what had just been said. The Council, for all their advanced technology and ancient wisdom, could offer no true protection. Whatever came next, humanity would have to face it using nothing but their own resourcefulness and determination. In the weeks that followed, the secret coalition worked faster than ever, driven by a growing sense that time was running short. Laura barely slept, splitting her hours between analyzing alien technology and coordinating with teams across the globe. Grace worked alongside her, refining early defensive systems, while Nathan managed the delicate political balance required to keep dozens of nations cooperating without panic spreading to the public. A breakthrough came unexpectedly, late one night, when a young engineer named Oliver Bancroft discovered a hidden function within one of the recovered alien fragments, a small device capable of generating a brief, localized distortion field, bending light and energy just enough to obscure a small area from outside detection. "It's not full invisibility," Oliver explained excitedly, demonstrating the device to a gathered group of scientists. "But it could hide a ship, or a small facility, from a distance. It might buy us critical time if we ever needed to retreat or regroup." The discovery renewed a sense of hope throughout the coalition. For the first time since the crisis began, humanity possessed something beyond fear and uncertainty. A small, imperfect tool, but a tool nonetheless. Yet even as progress continued, unease lingered beneath the surface. Reports of strange lights and unexplained equipment failures increased across remote regions of the world. Each incident brief and mysterious, each one a quiet reminder that unseen eyes were watching, waiting, calculating. Laura found herself standing outside the research facility one clear evening, staring up at the vast, star-filled sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of any telescope she had ever used, two ancient powers continued their endless struggle, a conflict humanity had never asked to be part of, yet could no longer fully avoid. Nathan joined her outside, his expression tired but resolute. "Do you think we're ready?" he asked quietly. "No," Laura admitted, "but I don't think we have the luxury of waiting until we are." They stood together in silence, watching the stars, each aware that whatever quiet peace remained was likely borrowed time. Somewhere beyond the edge of their solar system, Forces far older and far more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced, continued moving closer, indifferent to the fragile, determined species preparing quietly beneath them. The choice had been made. Humanity would not simply hide, and it would not simply wait. Whatever came next, they intended to meet it with whatever strength they could gather, however small it might seem against the vastness of the war unfolding above them. In the weeks that followed that quiet decision, Laura found herself pulled into a part of the Coalition's work she had not expected, tracking down the identity of whoever had reactivated the old satellite months earlier. The trail, cold for weeks, finally produced a name when Grace uncovered payroll records linked to the abandoned desert compound. The name belonged to a former engineer named Peter Langley, once employed by the same military contractor responsible for building the original satellite decades earlier. According to old records, Langley had been quietly dismissed from his position years before the project's official cancellation, following a dispute over the ethics of the research being conducted. He believed in listening horizon, Grace said, reviewing the old files with Laura late one evening. Believed in it enough that losing his job over it clearly didn't change his mind. So he waited, Laura said slowly, piecing the timeline together. Waited years, quietly, until he found a way to finish what the project started. Tracking down Langley himself proved more difficult than uncovering his name. He had lived quietly for years, off the grid, in a small rural community far from any major city. When Nathan finally arranged a private, careful meeting, Langley agreed to speak, though his reasons for doing so remained unclear until the conversation began. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt," Langley said, sitting across from Laura and Nathan in a small, secure room. His voice carried the weariness of someone who had spent years wrestling with a decision he could not fully explain, even to himself. "I just wanted to know. After all those years, after everyone else gave up, I just wanted to know if anyone out there ever heard us." "You reactivated a decommissioned military satellite," Nathan said carefully. "You used its systems to send a signal directly toward hostile territory. Territory we didn't even know existed until recently." "I didn't know it was hostile," Langley said, his voice tightening. "I didn't know any of this. I thought I was just finishing an old experiment, one that never should have been abandoned in the first place." Laura studied him carefully, searching for anger or deception, but found only quiet regret. "Do you understand what your signal may have caused?" she asked gently. Langley nodded slowly, his eyes heavy with the weight of understanding that had clearly grown over the past several weeks. "I've read the reports. I've seen what's happening. If what you're telling me is true, then yes, I understand exactly what I've done." The revelation, though unsettling, offered a strange sense of closure to a mystery that had lingered over the Coalition for weeks. Langley was not a spy, nor an agent of some hidden foreign power, simply a man driven by decades of unanswered curiosity, unaware of the danger his actions might invite. Nathan chose not to publicize the discovery widely, recognizing that placing blame on a single, remorseful individual would do little to address the larger crisis still unfolding above their world. Instead, Langley was quietly relocated to a secure facility, offered protection in exchange for his cooperation, his knowledge of the original Listening Horizon project proving unexpectedly valuable to the Coalition's ongoing efforts. With one mystery resolved, the Coalition turned its full attention back toward preparation. Oliver's team continued refining the distortion field technology, while other groups focused on strengthening early shielding systems developed from recovered alien fragments. Laura split her time between technical work and diplomatic meetings, her unique position as the first to detect the original signal, earning her a steady, if unofficial, role advising world leaders directly. During one such meeting, a leader from a smaller island nation raised a question that lingered in Laura's mind long after the discussion ended. If this war has existed for so long, far longer than human history itself, what happens if it never truly ends? Are we simply preparing for a single confrontation, or for a threat that may never fully disappear? Laura had no clear answer, and neither, it seemed, did anyone else in the room. The uncertainty of that question shaped much of the Coalition's ongoing strategy, a quiet acknowledgement that whatever they built now might need to last far longer than anyone initially hoped. As tensions continued to build across the solar system, Small victories began to emerge from the Coalition's tireless work. Successful tests of the distortion field technology allowed several remote research outposts to avoid detection during brief, unexplained scout activity, buying valuable time for further development. Slowly, cautiously, humanity's makeshift defenses began taking shape, built not from fear alone, but from a growing determination to face whatever came next, with whatever strength they could gather. Laura often thought back to her conversation with Langley, to his quiet admission of guilt and regret. In some strange way, his story reflected humanity's larger situation entirely. A species driven by curiosity, reaching toward the unknown without fully understanding the consequences, now forced to answer for choices made long before most of them even realized the stakes involved. Yet despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, Laura found a quiet thread of hope running through the Coalition's efforts. Where the Council had offered only warnings and cautious distance, humanity had chosen to respond with resilience, cooperation, and a stubborn refusal to simply disappear into silence. Whatever the vast, ancient war above them ultimately decided, humanity intended to meet it as something more than a frightened, hidden world. They intended to meet it as a species willing to stand, learn, and adapt, however uncertain the odds against them might seem. The warning came at dawn, when the sky over the research facility still held traces of pale orange light. A distant sensor array, positioned near the outer edge of the solar system, detected a vessel moving at incredible speed, far larger than the scout ship spotted weeks earlier. Laura was pulled from a rare moment of sleep by an urgent call from Grace. "You need to get to the command center now," Grace said, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. "Something is coming, and it's not just observing this time." By the time Laura arrived, the command center buzzed with quiet, controlled tension. Officials from multiple nations gathered around a central display, watching a single, glowing point move steadily closer to the outer edge of their solar system. Nathan stood near the front, arms crossed, jaw tight. "It's a Dominion vessel," he said, without turning around. "Confirmed by size and energy signature. It's heading directly toward an unmanned research probe near Jupiter." Laura felt her chest tighten. That probe, a small, unmanned device launched years earlier to study Jupiter's atmosphere, was the closest piece of human technology to the approaching vessel. "Can we warn it away?" she asked. "Redirect it somehow?" "There's no time," Grace said, her eyes fixed on the display. "At its current speed, contact will happen within the next few minutes." The room fell into tense silence as everyone watched the screen, helpless to intervene. Moments later, the probe's signal flickered, then vanished entirely, replaced by a burst of static that quickly faded into nothing. "It's gone," Nathan said quietly. "Destroyed." For the first time, humanity had lost something to the war unfolding beyond their world. It was only a machine, unmanned and distant, yet the loss struck deeper than anyone expected. It confirmed, in the clearest way possible, that the danger Voss had warned them about was no longer theoretical. Within hours, Voss returned once more, this time accompanied by a larger delegation, their usual calm demeanor replaced by visible distress. "The Dominion vessel that destroyed your probe was a scout, testing the boundaries of your system," Voss explained. "Its actions confirm what we feared. They no longer see Earth as hidden or harmless." "What happens now?" Nathan asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "The Council has attempted to intervene diplomatically," Voss said. "We have reminded the Dominion Command of ancient agreements meant to protect developing worlds from unnecessary conflict. They have chosen to ignore our reminder." Laura felt a cold certainty settle over her. "Then diplomacy has failed. For now," Voss admitted. "We continue to seek alternatives, but time grows short. You must prepare for the possibility of direct confrontation." The Coalition moved quickly, activating contingency plans that had been quietly developed over the previous weeks. Using the defensive technology adapted from recovered alien fragments, a small fleet of specially modified vessels was prepared, hidden within remote military installations scattered across the globe. Laura worked alongside Oliver and Grace, making final adjustments to the distortion field technology first discovered weeks earlier. It remained imperfect, but it offered a small, valuable advantage. the ability to obscure a vessel's presence just long enough to gain a tactical edge. 2 days after the loss of the research probe, another alert sounded through the command center. A larger Dominion vessel, far more advanced than the scout ships before it, appeared near the edge of the solar system, moving steadily toward Mars. "This isn't a scout," Nathan said, studying the data with growing concern. "This is a Vanguard ship, designed for direct engagement." The coalition faced an impossible decision: remain hidden and hope the vessel passed without noticing the small human outposts near Mars, or reveal their presence and risk provoking an attack far beyond anything they had prepared for. Laura stood before the assembled leaders, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "If we hide, and they find us anyway, we lose any chance to demonstrate that we're not simply helpless. If we reveal ourselves carefully, on our own terms, we might change how they see us entirely." After hours of tense debate, a decision was reached. A single, unarmed human vessel, equipped with the newly developed distortion technology, would approach the Dominion ship, not to attack, but to communicate. It was a risk, but one the coalition believed necessary. The vessel, piloted by a calm, experienced astronaut named Daniel Osgood, launched quietly from a hidden lunar outpost, its systems running the experimental cloaking technology at full capacity. Laura watched from the command center, her hands clenched tightly at her sides, as the small ship moved steadily toward its destination. "Daniel, do you copy?" Nathan asked through the comm system, his voice carrying carefully controlled calm. "Copy," Daniel replied, his voice steady despite the enormity of what he was about to attempt. "Approaching designated coordinates now." As the human vessel drew closer to the massive Dominion ship, its distortion field activated, bending light and energy just enough to obscure its exact position. For a tense, silent moment, nothing happened. Then, the Dominion vessel shifted course slightly, clearly aware of something nearby, though unable to fully detect its precise location. Daniel broadcast a carefully prepared message, translated using data gathered from Council communications weeks earlier. "We are not your enemy," the message stated. "We do not wish to fight. We ask only to be left in peace." The response came swiftly, and it was not what anyone had hoped for. The Dominion vessel altered its trajectory entirely, moving directly toward the small human ship, its weapons systems activating with a burst of visible energy. "They're targeting him," Grace said, her voice rising with alarm. Daniel reacted instantly, engaging evasive maneuvers his training had prepared him for, using every advantage the small ship's advanced propulsion system could offer. The Dominion vessel pursued relentlessly, firing precise, controlled bursts of energy that Daniel narrowly avoided through sharp, practiced piloting. "Distortion field holding," Oliver reported, monitoring the ship's systems closely. "But it won't last much longer at this level of strain." Laura watched, helpless, as Daniel weaved through open space, his ship a tiny, fragile speck against the vast, imposing silhouette of the Dominion vessel. Just as it seemed the pursuit might end in disaster, 3 additional human vessels emerged from hidden positions near Mars, previously concealed using the same distortion technology. The sudden appearance of multiple vessels seemed to catch the Dominion ship off guard. It hesitated, its weapons systems powering down slightly as it reassessed the unexpected situation. Daniel used the brief opportunity to retreat toward the safety of the lunar outpost, his ship trailing faint streams of energy from the strain of its recent maneuvers. The Dominion vessel did not pursue further. Instead, it turned slowly, retreating back toward the outer edge of the solar system, its intentions unclear, its presence no less unsettling for its sudden departure. Back at the command center, tension slowly gave way to cautious relief. Daniel's ship landed safely, its pilot shaken but unharmed. Laura let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her hands finally relaxing at her sides. "They didn't expect resistance," Nathan said quietly, studying the data from the encounter. "They expected an easy, uncontested approach. Instead, they found something unexpected." Voss appeared soon after, its shifting form carrying an expression Laura had not seen before, something resembling cautious surprise. "You have done something remarkable," Voss said. "The Dominion vessel has withdrawn, at least for now. Word of this encounter will spread quickly among Dominion command." "Is that good or bad for us?" Laura asked. That depends, Voss said carefully, on how they choose to interpret it. As a threat to be eliminated, or as a species worth reconsidering. The uncertainty hung heavily over the room, yet beneath the tension, a new, quiet confidence had begun to take root. Humanity, for the first time, had stood against a power far beyond their own, and had not simply been overwhelmed. Laura stared out the window, watching the pale morning light stretch slowly across the sky, aware that whatever came next would shape the future of her entire world. The line had been crossed. There was no returning to quiet hiding, no simple retreat back into ignorance and safety. Whatever the Dominion decided next, humanity would face it standing, not kneeling. That night, the command center remained active, long after the immediate crisis had passed. Officials and scientists alike too restless to rest, despite the exhaustion weighing on everyone present. Laura sat quietly with Grace near a bank of monitors, watching quiet replays of the encounter, studying every movement of the Dominion vessel for any clue about what might come next. "They pulled back faster than I expected," Grace said, rubbing her tired eyes. Almost like they were testing a theory, and the results surprised them. "Maybe that's exactly what happened," Laura said. "Voss said the Dominion doesn't act quickly. Maybe this was never meant to be a real attack. Maybe it was simply meant to see how we would respond." Nathan joined them, carrying 2 cups of coffee, offering one to Laura without a word. "If that's true," he said, sitting down heavily beside them, "then we just passed some kind of test. The question is, what happens if the next one is harder?" The days following the encounter passed in a strange, uneasy calm. Daniel, still recovering from the physical strain of his daring flight, was hailed quietly within the coalition as something of a reluctant hero, though he remained humble about the experience whenever anyone brought it up. "I was terrified the entire time," he admitted to Laura during a quiet visit to the medical wing. "I kept waiting for something to go wrong, for the field to fail, for the ship to fall apart around me. It felt like the longest few minutes of my life." "You didn't hesitate," Laura said. "Even when it mattered most." "There wasn't time to hesitate," Daniel said with a tired smile. "Sometimes I think that's the only reason any of us manage to do anything brave at all. We simply don't have time to think about how frightened we really are." Meanwhile, the coalition worked quickly to analyze every detail of the encounter, hoping to extract whatever useful information they could from the brief, tense confrontation. Oliver's team studied the Dominion vessel's weapon systems closely, comparing the recorded energy signatures against the fragments of alien technology already in their possession. "Their weapons operate on a similar principle to the defensive shielding we've been developing," Oliver explained during a briefing several days later. "If we can refine our understanding of how their systems function, we might be able to improve our own shielding significantly, maybe even develop early countermeasures." The revelation offered a cautious sense of progress, though everyone in the room understood how far humanity still had to go before truly matching the capabilities of a civilization capable of interstellar war. Still, for the first time, the gap no longer felt entirely impossible to close. Voss returned several days later, delivering news that added further complexity to an already uncertain situation. "The Dominion Command remains divided regarding how to proceed," Voss explained. "Some advocate for a stronger, more decisive response. Others urge caution, wary of underestimating a species capable of such unexpected resistance." "And what does the Council recommend?" Nathan asked. "Caution, as always," Voss said. "But also, cautious hope. What you accomplished near Mars was not something we anticipated. It has shifted the conversation, even within our own ranks." Laura studied Voss carefully, searching for any hint of what that shifting conversation might mean for humanity's future. "Does that mean the Council might reconsider offering us more direct support?" "It is possible," Voss admitted. "Though such decisions move slowly within our own structures, bound by traditions far older than your entire species' history." The uncertainty lingered, yet beneath it, something new had taken root within the coalition, a fragile but growing sense that humanity's fate was not entirely sealed. The encounter near Mars had proven that resourcefulness and courage could, at least for a moment, hold back the full weight of an ancient and powerful adversary. As the days passed, Laura found herself standing once more before the observatory window, watching the quiet movement of stars overhead. Somewhere among them, an ancient war continued its slow, deliberate march, indifferent to the small, determined world, now standing cautiously in its path. Yet for the first time since the crisis began, Laura allowed herself to feel something beyond fear. She felt the quiet, stubborn spark of hope, fragile but real, the same spark that had carried Daniel through his dangerous flight, and Oliver through his relentless research, and Nathan through countless impossible decisions. Whatever challenges awaited humanity beyond the edge of their solar system, they would face them together, carrying forward the same resilience that had already surprised a civilization far older and more powerful than their own. Word of the encounter near Mars spread quickly through the small circle of leaders and scientists who understood its true significance. What had begun as a desperate act of survival had, against all expectation, become a turning point. For the first time since the Council's warning, humanity felt something other than fear. They felt possibility. Laura stood in the command center 3 days later, reviewing reports gathered from sensors across the solar system. The Dominion vessel had not returned, though faint traces of unusual activity continued to appear near the outer edge of their detection range, a quiet reminder that the danger had not disappeared entirely. "They're regrouping," Nathan said, studying the same data beside her. "Deciding how to respond to what happened. Or deciding whether we're worth the effort at all," Grace added, joining them at the console. Voss arrived later that day, appearing before a larger gathering than usual, including representatives from nearly every major nation on Earth. The mood in the room had shifted noticeably since their last meeting, a mixture of cautious hope and lingering uncertainty. "The encounter near Mars has caused significant discussion within Dominion Command," Voss explained. "Reports suggest they did not expect meaningful resistance from a species they considered primitive. This has led to disagreement among their leadership." "Disagreement how?" Nathan asked. "Some within the Dominion argue that Earth should be eliminated quickly, before your capabilities grow further," Voss said carefully. "Others argue that a species capable of such resourcefulness, using nothing but recovered fragments of technology, may be more valuable as a cautious ally than as an enemy." The room fell silent, absorbing the weight of that statement. Laura exchanged a glance with Grace, both women recognizing the fragile, uncertain nature of the opportunity now unfolding before them. "And the Council's position?" Laura asked. "Has it changed?" Voss hesitated, its shifting form flickering thoughtfully. "The Council has traditionally avoided direct involvement in conflicts between older powers. However, recent events have forced a reconsideration of that policy. There are those among us who believe Earth's demonstrated resilience deserves acknowledgement, and perhaps support." "What kind of support?" Nathan pressed. "A conditional alliance," Voss said. "Not full membership within the Council, not yet, but a formal recognition of Earth as an independent, sovereign world, along with limited access to shared defensive knowledge, intended to help stabilize this region against further Dominion aggression." The offer, though cautiously worded, represented a dramatic shift from the Council's original stance of quiet avoidance. Leaders around the room began speaking at once, weighing the benefits and risks of accepting such an alliance, aware that it would forever change humanity's place in the wider universe. Laura remained quiet, her mind drawn back to the earliest days of the crisis, to the moment she first discovered the old activation log buried within the Council's original relay. She thought of the quiet signal sent long before anyone understood the danger it might invite, the small, unintentional spark that had ultimately led to this moment. "Voss," she said, stepping forward, "before we accept anything, I need to understand something. That first signal, the one buried in the relay's history, sent decades before your delegation ever arrived. Do you know who sent it, or why?" The room grew quiet as attention shifted toward Laura's question. Voss's shifting form dimmed slightly, a now familiar sign of unease. "We were not certain, until recently," Voss admitted. "Our investigation, prompted by your own discovery, revealed the signal originated from a small, independent research project, active decades ago, unconnected to any official government effort. It appears the individuals responsible were attempting to establish contact with intelligent life beyond your world, unaware of the greater dangers such contact might invite. So this entire crisis," Laura said slowly, began because a small group of curious scientists reached out into the dark, hoping for nothing more than proof that humanity wasn't alone. In part, yes, Voss said, though the larger conflict between the Viral Concord and the Ashen Dominion existed long before that signal was ever sent. Your world's actions did not create the war, they simply drew its attention closer, sooner than it might otherwise have arrived. The revelation settled heavily over Laura, a strange mixture of relief and quiet sorrow. Humanity had not caused the war threatening their world, yet their own curiosity, born from a genuine desire to connect with something greater than themselves, had inadvertently hastened its arrival. The following weeks brought careful, deliberate negotiations between Earth's leaders and the Galactic Council. Laura found herself directly involved in many of these discussions, her early role in uncovering the truth behind the original signal, earning her a place at the table few scientists could have imagined. The proposed alliance, though limited, promised access to shared knowledge regarding defensive technology, communication methods, and a deeper understanding of the wider universe beyond Earth's solar system. In exchange, humanity would commit to careful, controlled development, avoiding aggressive expansion or unnecessary provocation of other powers. Not everyone welcomed the arrangement eagerly. Some leaders remained deeply suspicious of Council intentions, questioning whether true partnership was possible between a species as young as humanity and civilizations that had existed for countless generations before Earth's own history began. Others worried about losing independence, becoming little more than a minor, controlled outpost within a much larger political structure. Nathan, who had grown into a steady, respected voice throughout the crisis, addressed these concerns directly during one of the final negotiation sessions. "We are not asking to become dependent on the Council," he said firmly. "We are asking for the tools to protect ourselves, on our own terms, guided by our own choices. If that arrangement ever threatens our independence, we reserve the right to walk away." Voss, present for the discussion, nodded slowly, a gesture Laura recognized as a sign of respect learned through weeks of careful observation. "That condition is fair," Voss said, "and it will be honored." The formal agreement was signed quietly, without grand ceremony, deep within the same mountain facility where Laura had first begun her work months earlier. It marked humanity's official, cautious entry into a much larger, more complex universe, one filled with ancient conflicts, uncertain alliances, and dangers far beyond anything they had previously imagined. In the days following the agreement, life slowly began returning to a new kind of normal. Governments maintained careful secrecy regarding the full details of what had transpired, though rumors and quiet speculation continued to spread among those close enough to sense that something significant had changed in the world. Laura returned to the original observatory where the crisis had first begun, standing quietly before the same console where she had first detected the mysterious signal so many months earlier. The old cloaking relay stood nearby, silent now, no longer needed in the same way it once had been. She thought back to the frightened uncertainty of those early days, the Council's desperate warnings, the quiet dread of discovering humanity's own accidental role in drawing danger closer to their world. She thought of Daniel's brave, uncertain flight near Mars, of Grace's tireless work adapting alien technology, of Nathan's steady leadership through impossible decisions. Voss appeared beside her unexpectedly, its shifting form calm and quiet in the dim observatory light. "You seem thoughtful," Voss said gently. "I keep thinking about what you told me," Laura replied, "that the Council never truly wanted to protect us from the war itself. You wanted to protect the rest of the universe from what we might become, once provoked." Voss remained silent for a long moment, neither confirming nor denying the observation. "Humanity has shown remarkable resilience," Voss said finally. "Whether that resilience becomes a source of stability or further conflict remains to be seen. That choice belongs entirely to you." Laura considered those words carefully, understanding for the first time the true weight of humanity's new place among the stars. Earth was no longer hidden, no longer isolated, no longer safe in the quiet, ignorant way it once had been. Yet it was also no longer alone, standing instead at the edge of a vast, complicated universe, filled with both danger and possibility. As Voss departed quietly into the night, Laura remained behind, staring up at the same stars she had studied for most of her life. Somewhere among those distant lights, an ancient war continued, indifferent to the small, determined world that had unexpectedly drawn its attention. But for the first time since this journey began, Laura did not feel afraid of that vast, endless sky. She felt something closer to quiet determination, the same steady resolve she had witnessed in Nathan, in Grace, in Daniel, and in countless others who had faced impossible odds without turning away. Humanity had been warned to stay hidden, to remain quiet, to avoid drawing attention to itself at any cost. Instead, they had chosen a different path, one built on resilience, cooperation, and the quiet courage to stand firm, even when survival seemed uncertain. The war among the stars had already begun, long before humanity ever understood its existence. But how that story continued, whether shaped by fear or by courage, was now a chapter humanity intended to write for themselves. In the months that followed the signing of the agreement, life at the mountain facility gradually shifted from crisis management toward something resembling steady, purposeful work. Laura found herself leading a small research division dedicated to studying the shared knowledge the Council had cautiously begun providing, carefully guiding her team through concepts that stretched far beyond anything human science had previously imagined. Grace, now recognized as one of the foremost experts on adapted alien technology, worked closely with international teams to refine the early shielding and distortion systems developed during the crisis, transforming crude, hastily built prototypes into more stable, reliable tools. Oliver, once a quiet, overlooked engineer, became a leading voice within the Coalition's technical division, his early discovery having played a critical role in humanity's first successful stand against the Dominion. Daniel returned to active duty within the newly formed Defense Coalition, training a growing number of pilots in the careful, delicate art of navigating vessels equipped with the still-developing distortion technology. He rarely spoke of his experience near Mars unless directly asked, though those who worked closely with him could sense the quiet confidence his brief, dangerous encounter had instilled within him. Nathan, meanwhile, took on a broader diplomatic role, working tirelessly to maintain the fragile cooperation between nations that had once viewed each other with deep suspicion. The crisis had forced old rivals into unlikely partnership, and maintaining that partnership, Nathan often reminded those around him, would prove just as important as any technological advancement. "We didn't survive this because of any single weapon, or any single piece of alien technology," he said during one gathering of coalition leaders. "We survived because, for the first time in our history, we chose to work together, instead of against each other. That choice matters just as much as anything the Council has offered us." Laura often reflected on how much had changed since that first frantic night in the observatory, when a strange signal first appeared on her screen, shattering the quiet, predictable rhythm of her life. She thought of the fear that had gripped the entire world during those early days, the desperate uncertainty of the Council's warnings, and the slow, hard-won confidence that had gradually replaced it. One quiet afternoon, Voss visited the observatory once more, appearing beside Laura as she reviewed updated star charts, now supplemented with information shared cautiously by the Council. "You seem different than when we first met," Voss observed. "I think all of us are different," Laura said. "We've had to become different just to survive what's happened." "Growth born from necessity," Voss said thoughtfully. "It is a pattern the Council has observed among many young civilizations, though few adapt as quickly, or as effectively, as your species has." "Is that a compliment?" Laura asked, a small smile tugging at her lips. "An observation," Voss replied, though something in its shifting form suggested quiet approval nonetheless. As their conversation continued, Voss shared additional details regarding the broader conflict between the Virel Concord and the Ashen Dominion, information the Council had previously withheld out of caution. "The war," Voss explained, "stemmed from disagreements reaching back countless generations, rooted in disputes over territory, resources, and fundamentally different visions for how civilizations should govern themselves across the stars." "It sounds exhausting," Laura said quietly, "a conflict that never truly ends." "Many wars among older civilizations follow similar patterns," Voss admitted. "Perhaps that is precisely why your species' resilience carries such significance. Fresh perspectives, untainted by generations of accumulated grievance." sometimes offer solutions older powers overlook entirely. The idea lingered in Laura's mind long after Voss departed that evening. Perhaps humanity's youth, so often viewed as a weakness by older, more established civilizations, might instead become one of their greatest strengths, a fresh perspective, capable of navigating challenges that had stumped ancient powers for generations. Months later, a small, formal ceremony took place within the mountain facility, marking the official establishment of Earth's new defense coalition, now recognized cautiously by the Galactic Council as a legitimate, independent power within the region. Leaders from every corner of the world gathered together, joined by key figures who had guided humanity through its most dangerous crisis, including Laura, Nathan, Grace, Daniel, and Oliver. Standing before the gathered crowd, Nathan addressed the room with quiet, measured confidence. "We were warned to hide," he said. "Warned that we were too small, too fragile, too primitive to survive what was coming. Instead, we chose resilience over fear, cooperation over division, and courage over silence. Whatever challenges still lie ahead, we face them today as a united, determined world, ready to shape our own future among the stars." Laura listened from the back of the room, her thoughts drifting once more to that fateful night when the alarm first sounded in her quiet observatory. She thought of Langley and the quiet, unintended consequences of a hopeful signal sent decades earlier. She thought of the Council's fear and the war they had so desperately hoped humanity would never need to face. Yet here they stood, no longer hidden, no longer waiting quietly in the dark, but standing openly among a universe far larger and more complicated than anyone had imagined. The war among the stars had not ended, and likely never fully would. But humanity, once warned to disappear quietly into silence, had instead chosen to stand, adapt, and grow. As the ceremony concluded, and the room slowly emptied into the cool evening air, Laura stepped outside once more, gazing up at the same vast, star-filled sky that had first drawn her toward a life of quiet scientific curiosity. The universe remained as vast and uncertain as ever, filled with dangers she could not fully predict. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, Laura did not feel small beneath that endless sky. She felt part of something larger, something resilient, something capable of facing whatever the future still had in store. Whatever came next, humanity would meet it not as a hidden, frightened world, but as a determined, united people, ready to write their own chapter within the vast, unfolding story of the stars.